Hello, I'm sorry I can't do this. Imagine if I just left that stage, like what I just did about a few seconds ago. I would have never gotten the chance to share my story with you. 大家好，我是国际部901王宥云. And as you probably guessed, today I would be talking about the fear of public speaking. But more specifically, how perseverance can conquer the fear of public speaking. Everyone experiences fear. It's an inevitable aspect of human nature. What is your greatest fear in life? And I mean something that triggers you physically, psychologically, or emotionally. Some common fears people have are death, heights, clowns, or enclosed spaces. But do any of you know what is the greatest fear in the whole world that most people suffer from? Anyone? Thank you. Loneliness. It's actually a pretty close answer. But the answer is the fear of public speaking. According to statistics and studies have shown that approximately 75% of the world's population experiences some form of public speaking phobia, also known as glossophobia. And according to the chart, you can see that the fear of public speaking is obviously higher compared to the other kinds of fears, including death. That means that the other TEDx speakers here today aren't afraid to die at all. I'm sure that most of you are familiar with Santa Claus, right? And for those of you who still believe in Santa Claus, would you mind raising your hand for me, please? Thank you. I see a lot of people raising their hands. And now I would like to ask the ones who just raised their hand another question, which is, what is your first impression of Santa Claus? Please, okay. Okay, kind old man, thank you. Well, this is actually what I expect from most people to think about him. But not only do I have a fear of public speaking, I'm also afraid of Santa Claus. Why, you may ask? Because remember the song, Here Comes Santa Claus? So he sees you when you're sleeping. Imagine having an old man stare at you when you're sleeping. And he knows when you're awake. So he basically just spies on people. And third, he keeps a checklist of people he considers to be naughty. You know who else does that? Serial killers. Like they're keeping track of the victims or something. Now, I wouldn't want to spend too much time explaining why Santa Claus is creepy. And with that being said, I would like to explain public speaking to you first. Being a skill, public speaking requires both theoretical and practical training. Additionally, it enhances the confidence and communication abilities of an individual. And in order for one to master public speaking, they need to learn how to step out of their comfort zone. As humans, we're used to feeling protected, like a baby in his or her mother's arms. So a lot of people are still living in their own bubbles. And for many of us, leaving our comfort zone to do something new, such as public speaking, is like leaving our home and going into a brand new environment. Because every circumstance carries a negative consequence due to the primacy of anxiety, uncertainty, or unpredictability in our lives. It's challenging at first to keep up with your surroundings. But after leaving your zone, you'll notice that you have learned many new things and made more progress than you ever had. Shivering, mumbling, forgetting the lines, or not speaking loud enough. This was how I acted on stage 7 years ago. For as long as I remember, public speaking has always been one of my major flaws. As an introvert, talking to people can be pretty stressful for me, and I struggled a lot with perfectionism. I used to think that everything I did has got to be perfect, Because if I made a mistake, people will remember it, judge, and laugh until the day that I die. I know it sounds pretty dramatic, isn't it? But even the simplest things in life can make me extremely nervous. So I end up sweaty, blushing, with a trembling voice and a blank mind. I have no idea how to start a simple conversation. So I tend to practice a few times before I order food in restaurants. But my story of stage fright goes way back to first grade. I remember I was presenting an art PowerPoint in front of the whole class. And about 1 minute through the presentation, my anxiety started to kick in. I started stuttering and muttering. Then, I bolted away from the stage. After that incident, I successfully left a bad impression of myself. Many people criticized me for my cowardly actions, and my homeroom teacher was extremely disappointed in me. It was really awkward at the moment, I have to admit, but running away just because I'm afraid of judgment is so not worth it, because the consequences I had to face were much worse than that. My social life in school was completely ruined. I couldn't look people in the eyes when I talked to them, and I was too afraid to start any form of conversation with my friends. And that continued for a while until one day, I decided to stop running away from my fear. Not from Santa Claus, but from public speaking. Coincidentally, about a few months later, our school announced that there would be a speech competition. And without any hesitation, I signed up for the competition since I have a bad reputation for speaking in public. People wouldn't really mind if I don't make it to finals. And that was when I realized that being fearless is scarier than fear itself. Because once I no longer allow that fear to get the best of me, my fears don't hold me back anymore. And eventually, I joined the speech competition in first grade. And I can still clearly remember how it felt back then. So there I was, waiting behind the stage curtains for judges to call my name, reciting my lines again and again. And that was when I thought of all of the possible things that could go wrong, such as forgetting the lines or stuttering. And to make matters worse, the unlimited amount of people sitting there judging me made me even more nauseous. After the competition, my homeroom teacher decided to teach me a public speaking technique, which is to pretend your audience are watermelons. I'm sure she told me that to make me less nervous, but little did she know that as a 7-year-old girl with glossophobia at that time, this was how I pictured all my audiences to look. You don't think I'll feel any less nervous pretending all my audiences look like that, do you? Sure, I might feel distracted or even scared, but it certainly isn't going to be a piece of helpful speaking advice. And after realizing that this method doesn't work for me, I started finding other ways to overcome my fears. I rehearsed my speech in front of my parents for almost every single day. I recorded myself practicing on my phone, and I silently mouthed the words on my way to school. By the time of the competition, I knew every word by heart. And these are some of the pictures taken during my speech competitions from grade 1 to grade 6. At this point, I was more comfortable with public speaking than I had ever been. It was a journey of self-discovery and improvement for me to overcome my fear of public speaking. My fear once prevented me from pursuing innumerable opportunities. But now, I seize every chance I have to do so. Now, I would like to share some of the speaking techniques that I learned. That is, to let go of perfectionism, to select a topic of interest, and to practice as much as you can. The first thing you should do is to let go of your perfectionism. We must accept the fact that when it comes to public speaking, no one is perfect. Even some of the most talented professionals make mistakes themselves. Unless you make your mistakes clear to the audience by pausing during the speech, it is unlikely that they'll notice. The key is to keep going on telling your speech without any hesitation. Another helpful tip that I learned was to choose a topic that you're interested in, so that you can seem more confident and your persuasiveness will rise as well. And most importantly, practice, practice, and practice some more. I repeated it 3 times because it is very crucial. Talent, confidence, and practice are equally important. A speaker who doesn't practice is destined to fail. And a few ways for you to prepare for your speech are: you can rehearse in front of your family and friends to ask for feedback, or you can also try recording a video of yourself, then watching it to seek opportunities for improvement. This is a quote by an American author named H.P. Lovecraft of sci-fi and horror. The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear. And the oldest and strongest kind of fear is the fear of the unknown. We often fear events that haven't happened. It's like delivering a speech in front of a large audience, which is what I'm doing right now. We try to persuade ourselves that we'll mess up, embarrass ourselves, or fall flat on our faces. But each of these scenarios is a story invented in our own minds, and we don't have to be afraid of it. Now, I would like to introduce a game called Fear Box or Box of Fear. I would like to briefly introduce the game to you. So, it's basically a pretty straightforward game where the players insert their hands inside a cardboard box to identify the containing object. And what caught my attention about this game was how it perfectly demonstrated the power fear has over us, and how the imagination can increase the fear of the unknown. Alfred Adler once said that no experience is a cause of success or failure. We do not suffer from the shock of our experiences, so-called trauma, but we make out of them just what suits our purposes. We often use fear as an excuse to not try our best to accomplish something. But we shouldn't let fear become the boss of us. Instead of letting fear become the boss of us, we should let our passion and perseverance guide us through our lives. And if we continue doing something we're passionate about, we will eventually develop a sense of self-worth. And this is the path of determination. Thank you.